Hello and welcome to New Mexico's Naturopathic Medical Show. I'm Dr. Wendy Anita Van Dilla, Doctor of Naturopathic Medicine, and we continue our show with Gary Chavez from Alga Farms, which is a living microalgae soil amendment company here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So welcome back on the show, Gary.
Hi, thank you.
And we're going to continue our conversation about how his product can help improve the soil, which improves the plants, which improves human health and environmental health. So, Gary, continue telling us about this and the connection between soil, organic farming, your product,
so we talked
farmers market.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it last time, about how it works in the soil. But we'll show some images that basically give a good depth of how I like to see the basic product work in a perfect system, as well as the types of farming that you can do here in New Mexico by just getting brush and shrubs and basic material from under the trees to add to the algae, so you're not necessarily having to go buy bags of nutrients or other bottles of nutrients really. The idea is to get a good mix of compost using native native indigenous species ranging from cactuses to yucca, as well as smart harvesting. You can't just go and harvest the whole field. You gotta.
So you're talking about the whole process of a plant dying, decaying,
right,
becoming soil, becoming food for other plants to grow out of.
Correct.
That whole cycle.
That whole cycle, as well as going and sourcing those essential enzymes, and we talked about indigenous microorganisms. So finding those organisms that naturally occur here in New Mexico or wherever you are, but we're here in New Mexico, so we'll talk about it. But basically, as being holistic as possible and as sustainable as possible when farming, not just using basic traditional processes that we're used to getting results. Because it's scary for a farmer, especially myself, to go and venture into these realms when I can go and buy what I'm comfortable with and get the result that I expect.
So how you grew up here in New Mexico, right? Mm-hmm. And we're both native New Mexicans.
Yes.
But you were just telling me at the break that on your father's side.
On
right?
my mother's side.
On your mother's side, you can trace your ancestry all the way back to Spain.
Mm-hmm. So my Chavez side, I go by Chavez, so that side of me, my grandfather's side, we can follow them, same as the Bacas and the Nayas, which is my grandmother, and everyone's really closely related.
And these surnames are very common in New Mexico.
Yes, so they stand for something quite significant to us because it's part of our past for where we come from. So I take great pride in where I come from.
And this part of the United States was settled much earlier than other parts of the United States, because the Spaniards went to Mexico and then up through Mexico into the Southwest.
Yeah, and
then they'd abandoned you all.
Yeah, so we kind of got left here.
The orfanados.
Yeah, and essentially some of us were leaving already. We were hiding out and trying to get away from the the whole Catholic and religious aspects that were being pushed on people.
In Europe.
In Europe,
yes.
Yeah. So there are some parts of the family that do come from that. It's quite mixed, and so it's nice to bring that out in the product as well as the company. There's the uniqueness of where we come from and using that.
And your family settled here and started sustainable living.
Yeah.
And growing cattle for commercial.
So originally, my grandfather's father, so my great grandfather, he did dry crop farming. About his family. He was the last generation that kind of did a little bit of it. It stopped where basically we don't have rain anymore, so we can't do dry crop farming. But at one point in New Mexico, we could wait on the rains and we would get lush growth from that. Beans, corn, we have some family property that we used to farm on. You could see some of the sites where we removed trees and grew along the facing sides for sun. North side facing, so we could have all the sun facing us. There's really uniqueness to where the ag used to be, and now, you know, we don't really see that anymore. So that's kind of what my goal would be, is to hopefully bring, you know, maybe we can't do beans and corn, but maybe we can do things like wheat and like small clover, and just promoting bee crops, promoting bees, and just being more sustainable off the land by using just the rain. And the algae is made up of water, so it's nice because the algae can store water in its cell, so when it gets in the soil, it can slowly release that water over a period of time.
Oh, wow.
And so that's an added benefit for the, going back to our traditional methods, which is we wait on the rain. You know, we love the rain here, the moisture.
And this is a way the microorganisms help the plants by storing some of the water during a non-rain time,
Yes.
which often happens.
Uh-huh.
So you're really a new generation of your historical family business of living in this environment and producing.
Yeah, we normally did
foods.
cattle, you know, and cattle's great. We love cows, but without water, and we don't have grass. So without grass, we have to feed, and that takes away the whole sustainable aspect of just having, you know, cows live off the land. Like they naturally, that's their natural state. They weren't naturally, you know, spoon-fed anything. So that's another thing too, is how promote the grass for the cattle as well.
And I know that like many of my viewers, I'm sure, choose grass-fed beef, and that has a lot more nutrients in it, including essential fatty acids.
Yes.
So.
And that's really key to me, my family. I have children, so I like to feed them as best as possible. And that's one way I can help give them the nutrition they need, is making sure they have the proper protein.
Oh yeah, and with essential fatty acids, it nourishes our brain, and we can think better, and we can be more intelligent.
Correct. And I in fact, you can't feed the algae essential fatty acids, but I feed them precursors, vitamins and minerals, so they themselves can produce these essential fatty acids to transport into the plant. And because you can spray these things, and they help get uptake on the plant, and they act as a defense mechanism. So that's an added thing, is you can actually spray the algae on your plants to help buffer it as well.
You were telling me earlier that a strong plant doesn't need the pesticides and herbicides because it has natural defenses.
Yeah, I have one slide. I think it's the last slide, and it basically just basically, without getting too in depth right away, if you have a BRIX content, which is your sugar, specific gravity of sugar in your leaf. It's kind of confusing, but if you can grasp it, picture a bug, you know, or a human. Picture a human eating too much candy. Okay, you eat too much candy, you get really sick. You can't function. You go into a sugar coma. Happens to kids all the time. You know, you go high and you crash. Well, that happens to bugs. If you have a lot of sugar in your leaf, the bug will go in there. Maybe they'll eat it the first time. Maybe the second time, but sure not the third time they go back, they probably will either be gone, they have a short lifespan, so they may die. Same for fungus and mold that may occur on the plant. The plant becomes very receptive because there's too much sugar in it, and the plant wants that sugar because that's healthy. So the more sugar the plant has, the less likely it is to get chewed up.
So sugar in a plant system is used as a defense system.
Correct.
And a fuel.
And a fuel.
So yeah, we think of refined sugar as being bad, and this is a way of nature using sugar in very complex ways.
Correct. And these sugars are complex sugars as well. Maybe polysaccharides, sometimes they don't break, so you're not getting the full spectrum all the time on just a hand one. You know, you can get a little bit more in depth with these testing tests, but they have a basic meter that you can read it with the quartz, and you can determine how high your BRIX is, and it's a simple way for a farmer to just check what is happening.
Very interesting. And we've got some slides to
yeah,
illustrate some of this.
Yeah. So I think let's see what the first slide is.
There we go.
So this is the algae that you would find in nature.
So is this the species that you're using?
So this is cool. The reason I put this one here is because it's kind of hard to see them, but they're in there. What I do is I basically feed them specific nutrients, and I run them through certain elements to get rid of all of the bad stuff in there.
Okay, so what are the big blobs?
The big red ones are algae cells that are basically storing up beta carotenes, astaxanthins, pigments, essential fatty acids, all the good
great
stuff.
Nutrients.
Yeah, all the good stuff we want. But necessarily those cells aren't the ones that I'm looking at growing. I'm looking at growing the greener ones. So what I'll do is I'll feed it certain nutrients and I'll remove the species of algae that are in there that I necessarily don't want. And get the correct species out of there.
So the big blobs are nutrients for the green blobs?
Both. Their nutrients can be used by other species if they get attacked, and they are also nutrients for the fungus, bacteria, whatever's going on in that system right there to be chewed on, and they basically turn red to hide from them.
So we're looking at a village basically.
Yeah,
right now, right? There's a lot of different species, a lot going on in this slide.
There's probably about 15 different species just in this slide going on right here, and I use about 4 to 7 of them depending on the products that get grown.
Okay. Okay.
And each species does a certain thing.
And you were saying in the last show that a farmer can ask you to come out and do a farm visit and do a custom blend for them. So you can feed certain nutrients to the bacteria.
And essentially what's really cool, because my system's outdoors, is I would just start off with one of my basics nutrients I have already, start feeding it the nutrients that the plant would need, and in return the correct algae would then grow.
Oh, cool.
And you would remove certain ones.
So looking at this slide, I also see something that in my world would be like a rod.
And that's another species as well. That's probably a diatom that's been dried out a little bit.
So that's would that be a nutrient or a species that you might want to harvest?
I do keep those around. They're very, very, very minimum as far as the numbers go in certain products. And the main reason, without getting too proprietary, they're silicates. So they produce a silica around their shell. And those silicas are really important to building strong, I call them bones, but strong stalks for the plant. If you have a low silicate deficiency, you'll probably see your plant tend to tip over a little bit.
Well, silica is important for human bodies, for hair, nails, certain parts of our structure to keep it strong too. You were also telling me that that algae can have tails like flagella to swim, and also like legs.
Correct. So the legs are more like mobile. They kind of are what produce into, if I don't butcher the name, it's a lichen, or basically a mix between fungi and algae. Okay, and it's kind of that pursuing to that evolution, where my species, they're not. How I was taught by one of my professors, Dr. Boeing, that basically they're like little skeletal legs or antennas, if you would, and they float around and they help. They don't necessarily help move like a flagella, like a tail, but they help to detect and place themselves in settings, as well as when they become in harm, when they feel threatened. Those legs, their outer cell wall will actually extend to where their legs are, and they'll create spikes just like their legs. So they have tiny little spikes, little armor. And certain species do it, certain species don't, and just really fantastic for keeping. If you're looking at an algae to keep growing, these are some of the better ones to have in your system.
Well, that's fantastic. I can see why you're fascinated with algae. I mean, we have to put on clothes for different purposes, and their cell wall can actually become armor or become antenna or become legs or...
It's very interesting,
Very versatile.
Yeah, it's very versatile, as well as very just diverse to where the climate that they're in. If they have the right climate, for example, they grow in Yellowstone at the bottom, where you have these high temperatures and really high pressures, and you have this acidic algae that grows at virtually 3 pH, which is what Coke runs around or lower, and you get this beautiful pigment, and it turns out that these species of algae are great for wastewater remediation. So that's really,
Oh, fantastic. Yes.
yes, and that's really important for remediation for a byproduct. If we can have species that can remediate wastewater and put them in, say, grass that's going to be already, they already use the effluent water or gray water, excuse me, on our kids' grasses. If they can put a safe algae out there for kids when they fall in the grass and they cut themselves, as well as athletes, there's not harmful pesticides or insecticides or herbicides that may get into their system from just playing on the grass or
That is so
falling.
important, because the chemicals that we are using in our environment are making us so sick. And there's so many mystery diseases now that are going into the emergency rooms, and the doctors are overwhelmed, like, what the heck is going on? We're creating all these diseases, and what you're telling us is we can use a natural system to help clean up some of this mess and make plants strong and keep us healthier in so many different ways. Go for it.
Yes, yes.
This is the hope of future generations, is people like you are going to bring some stuff like this forward.
Well, thank you, and it's going to take a big band of us, but there's great work out there already.
Excellent.
So I'm just hopefully fitting into the niche that we can keep moving.
Are there species that can help digest oil spills?
So we talked a little bit about it last time, and the doctor who basically gave me the species that I use as an okay for the soil, because he had previous work with it, using it. I don't think he didn't use this specific type of species, I don't think, or maybe a conjunction, but he is the one who discovered Dr. Russ Chianelli, I believe, is one of the doctors who helped use microalgae to clean up the ocean and when we had the horrible spill in the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, wow.
And so that's where my theory and where where he basically got me online with is basically I can use this to clean up harmful pesticides and herbicides, insecticides, anything that may be sprayed that we know we have research showing that it's harmful to us even on a small level. If we can even remediate that by 20%, it'll take us even more through the threshold, and hopefully it'll keep on getting better.
Wow. So we're using nature's already designed digesters and the fungus and the algae that helps break things down so then it can be reused, recycled.
Right, yep, exactly.
What other slides do we have?
I think let's check out the next one. I believe...
We'll see it just in a little bit.
Let's see which one's going to come up. Oh, yeah, okay, this is the good one. Okay, this is the one. It's a little cut out, but...
Microbial benefits. So we've got bacteria, fungi, microalgae, how do you say that? Nematodes
and protozoa.
And then
Anthropods.
Anthropods.
And then the mycorrhiza are the little blue circles. Those really exist throughout the whole thing. They're not really in order. They're just kind of up there to give an idea of what the web, what goes on in your soil.
So these are beneficial microorganisms that are in our soil that help break things down, communicate, make healthy soil, healthy plants.
Yes.
Healthier environment.
And the idea is, as you see the algae in the middle, is that essentially it helps to feed the entire system. The start with the top. You have your fungi like your mushrooms that grow on top and break down and are actually really beneficial to the plant. Compost system on top. The microanthropods will actually break down green compost material. So if you have leaves or branches or anything that falls off the tree at the end of the year, if you have those in there, they're going to help break that down even more so than if you didn't. So including those in there make a really dynamic system, and those also eat off the algae. They will eat the algae as a nutrient source. And the algae basically is a catalyst to help promote all of these organisms in the soil, so that way you have basically a coexistence of species that can communicate and deliver.
Cool. And what about the white or light blue network? Is that water?
Those are the roots.
Oh, the roots of the plant.
Yeah, those are the roots of the plant. Yeah, they're that's essentially. I couldn't draw as much as I should. But the theory is the more tips you see at the end of a root system is what you're looking for, not necessarily the length of your root. If you could have a 10-foot tall root, for example, and it wouldn't be nearly as powerful as a 1-foot root that's basically a foot round.
Wow.
Wow. You're looking at the size of the root with as many small capillary type veins coming off of it promotes a stronger structure for the plant.
That's similar to our lymph system, that it's a one-way system in our body that absorbs things and then brings it into the liver for processing.
And it makes it really interesting because plants can actually, what they'll do is they'll, similar to that, and then they'll reverse it. So they'll reverse the system and they'll actually put back certain nutrients into the roots so that way they can store them for later and use them once they need a flower or once they need to produce a seed from that flower. It really depends on the plant, but they have the communication to put stuff back in as well for later.
Interesting. Wow. So this is a complex, very intelligent system, and it relies on the soil, not just the plant structure.
Correct. And this information's if you especially if you know about plant science, you know what we're talking about, but it's too much to theoretically talk about with the algae and the communication right now, because I'm working on my proprietary proof that we can actually show a communication with this species and how it may work, and it's really fascinating because you can see, especially getting in testimonies from individuals saying, hey, I see a communication in the soil, there's something that's occurring here. Or even just the typical person who has a house plant or at their office and has a little plant on their desk. I've had people just put it in there and they say, my plant was looking kind of sad and today, it's standing up. And so
it's perked up.
Yeah, it's perked up. And just even that little, it's not scientific information, but just that little bit of information from, just observation, it makes me happy.
Yes. So farmers, ranchers, commercial growers, and also gardeners. And even if you just have house plants, we can use your plants.
Correct.
Or your products.
Correct.
Great.
And we have, I think, 2 more slides. The last one shows what you want to see at the end. So essentially, you have 2 on the outside pictures. Those are little roots, and you can kind of see it's little small roots coming off. And it's really thick.
Okay,
and
so in the background.
The background, that's what you're looking at.
So on the right, the feathery structure, that's really good.
That's really good, yeah. And then on the left, I threw that in there because I'm not even sure what it is, the little jelly thing, but it came off the rock wool, the root, and the roots look healthy. They're the same root system, just different angles. So that's essentially the tip coming off. And essentially that's what you want. And when they die, these are root-bound plants that we had growing in the summertime with tomatoes, and we just dumped out the roots just to see what the life was at the end. And they should have been transplanted. Poor things, we tortured them. But that root system it was still white, it was still healthy, and it had very little brown edges or any detriment to the plant.
So even though the roots are so packed in with the addition of the microalgae, they're still healthy and able to absorb.
Yeah, it was amazing. I usually never let them get this compact. I'll put them in a bigger pot, but just because I never saw any issues. The tops looked fantastic.
So what we see above the ground and the tomatoes that were produced were fantastic. Excellent. Well, a lot of us, I've had a lot of green tomatoes, and that's frustrating.
Yeah, it is.
So, beautiful.
Okay. Yeah, and so the last one we'll talk about is just, here's what you can see essentially. I like to show people this picture because it talks about the ability for plants to resist. My father-in-law has been growing in La Cienega for, he's had his place over 20 years, and he had a hard time growing corn. And this was my first shot growing corn on his place, and here's the variety that we got.
And these are heirloom. These are natural or native corn.
Yeah, they're all native corn except for that big one. Was a one from Plants of the Southwest, which is from here, but it just doesn't look quite like the other ones. It's different. It came out really big, but they all had beautiful structure on them. They were all very sweet. The strawberry popcorn makes beautiful popcorn kernels for the kids.
Oh, it is gorgeous. That's a red one.
Yes, the red one. And so I had very little caterpillar damage. I had very little worm damage, which normally would have been the case.
So what did you do? Did you spray the actual plants? Did you add your product to the soil?
I did both. I would spray the top of the plant with just the algae and an organic insecticidal soap, which is basically just made up of phosphates and other natural remedies. And I spray that on at the beginning of the plant season, and then I don't touch it. I don't touch anything throughout the season.
Does that help with scale?
It doesn't necessarily help with scale. What it helps to do is it helps to build like essentially that sugar layer that we're talking about. It helps to basically feed the plant on the top. When we have a lot of rain, we don't have to worry about it. The rain comes down, the plant can actually absorb the nutrients out of the moisture, out of the air, and build that natural retardant, that foliar retardant. When we're growing inside or we're growing, for food crops, we need to actually spray them, even if it's as sustainable as possible. You always want to spray your plants with some sort of water because they are naturally used to getting nutrients through the top, not just through the bottom.
Not just through the bottom.
So I just sprayed the tops and then added the algae in the bottom, and we got that wonderful corn.
And there was a word on the last slide, BRIX, B-R-I-X,
Yes.
and you were talking about that earlier.
So
That's a measurement?
it's a measurement, yeah, and basically that specific gravity of sugar that's in there, like we talked about with kids, it really, really is important because when you don't have that complexity and even yellowing on the plant, you're going to be susceptible to insects and mold. And when we're talking about our water, there's massive amounts of harmful things.
So a higher BRIX builds plant immunity to resist pests, molds, and diseases. Excellent.
And just simple things that we can do.
That's such a beautiful picture with those native corns.
Thank you. I did that. That was my first outdoor plot that I did back in 2012 with the algae. That was the first time I used it on a garden bed.
Well, I really appreciate the farmers market. The Santa Fe Farmers Market is where I met Gary in the first place, and I really appreciate the farmers and the people that sell there, the integrity and also the quality. I mean, the native foods are so much healthier and so much richer in nutrients. We've only got 2 more minutes left.
Okay.
Are there any people in your life, teachers, people you've learned from that you want to
I'd
give tribute to?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank my wife. She's been through it with me all, and my kids, and then supporting family, of course. I really would like to thank the New Mexico State when I attended there, Dr. Vivka Boeing. I learned a lot from her, as well as Dr. Lammers. He brought me into the program.
Excellent.
I learned a great deal from them, as well as here at the community college.